Typically what happens is we hear from you of what your concern is. We might ask some staff members that are on the call to clarify. Normally it's only 2 counselors, but we've since changed the bylaws, so you are blessed with all of council this evening. To hear, which kind of skip some steps. But I just wanted to let you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that we'll be making a decision this evening. We might refer to staff for some information or want time to think or discuss and get back to you. So I just wanted to make sure I set the expectations properly.
No problem.
So you have time to share with us. So you've got 10 minutes on the clock. If you need all of that, I'm not sure, but you can kind of share with us what your concern is and what you're hoping we're able to help you with.
Okay, thanks. Just so record, this is my first Zoom meeting ever. So
excellent. Well, we're happy to be the first.
And not bad. Didn't really need to wear cologne.
No.
Anyway, so I just wrote something, so I'm just going to read it. So thank you for the opportunity to express my concerns regarding the residential rental license requirement. Since receiving the application a few weeks ago, I've emailed and called all the city councilors, the mayor, and the MPP and others about my concerns. I thank everyone that replied, but in the end, I heard the same thing, that it was the former committee that passed it and it was out of their control at the moment, with the mayor adding that it cannot be waived on a per property basis. So the word cannot sort of stuck with me, because basically laws and rules for the most part exist to solve a need, to make something fair and just and to keep us safe. They generally come from a good place, and I have no doubt the previous council had good intentions with this license requirement. However, once a law is passed, by its very nature, it becomes something fixed, cold, and calculated. If we're not careful, the very law that it was set to benefit us becomes disconnected and can actually do more harm than good. So just for a real life story, I was out in New York City around this time when the pandemic was hitting them especially hard. If you recall, they needed freezer trucks because there wasn't enough place for the bodies because they couldn't keep up. One night around this time, a police officer pulled over a vehicle speeding. Upon talking to the driver, the officer learns that she is a doctor at the local hospital returning home from a long shift. He notices her used N95 mask in the passenger seat that is she keeping for her next shift. Because as you remember, in the first wave, many doctors and nurses were forced to reuse their masks. He politely asks for her license and registration and goes back to his car. After a few minutes, he returns, hands her license and registration back, and tosses her his box of N95 masks and tells her to have a good night and drive slower. No ticket was given. Fact, she was speeding. In fact, there was a law against speeding. So why did she not get a ticket? Because while this law is cold and calculated, we as humans are not. We generally are compassionate and have common sense. I believe the officer realized that the doctor was accomplishing more good working at the hospital during a crisis than enforcing a speeding law could have. Stories like this is what the world needs. This helps us snap out of our routines. It's far too easy to lose touch of the bigger picture, that we are all in this together. Okay, now to my Thorold rental. I bought this house 15 years ago. It's on Linden Street near the beer store. It's a small 2-bedroom, 700 square foot house, 1-story. And to this day, it still is a small 2-bedroom, 700 square foot house. I charge $950 a month plus utilities. That covers my mortgage, maintenance, property taxes, and leaves a little bit for me at the end of the year. I've always treated it as a long-term investment. We all know that currently people are treating houses as short-term investments. They buy, renovate, or flip, or they convert single family houses into duplexes, triplexes, or even quadplexes and charge the most they can get for each unit. A 2-bedroom house goes for about $1,300 to $1,500 plus utilities currently. A single person or young couple starting out simply cannot afford this. The fact that I am offering my rental at an affordable rent is reason enough that this fee should not be applied to my case. I should not be penalized for trying to offer affordable housing. Now, you may argue that the law is to protect the tenant from unsafe living conditions. That's fair. However, we all know which rentals this law was meant for, houses that have been converted from their original purpose. These properties are not hard to find. If you see a house with 6 cars in the driveway, chances are it was converted to a multifamily house and it may not be safe. If you see that the front yard or backyard is now used as a parking lot, guess what? Most more people are living in that house than it was originally designed for. If there are 2, 3, or 4 mailboxes, you might want to look into it. I cannot stress this enough. You simply need to just drive by my house and see that I kept it as a single family home. Better yet, ask me or the tenant for a tour. It will take all but 45 seconds to walk through the entire main floor. It's 700 square feet. I will gladly show you an unchanged living room, an unchanged kitchen, an unchanged bedroom, and an unchanged bathroom. The house has not been modified in any way since I bought it. I see no need to having to pay $500 plus the cost of an electrician for the first 2 years, and then $200 a year after for something that can be resolved by a simple drive-by or a walkthrough. In closing, the current real estate market is insane. Help keep an affordable house on the market. Please use some common sense. The greater good is not being accomplished by enforcing this law in my case. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And now I'll just open the floor to any counselors that have any questions of staff or of Giovanni.
Yep, go ahead.
Counselor Sentence.
Yeah, I'd just like to hear Jason's view on this, if we could, please.
Sure. So council, you're all aware of the bylaw. The bylaw does stipulate that all rental properties within the city of Thorold require a residential rental license. The bylaw has been in place for a little over 2 years now. I can respect that Mr. Gregorio probably does maintain this property. However, there aren't any provisions within the bylaw that make exceptions. Given the, I heard Mr. Gregorio's example that he used with the police officer, and I do respect the discretion that officers often have, including our bylaw officers. One of the differences, however, though, is that a traffic ticket, along with many other violations, are a point in time offense. So once it's done, it's done. Whereas this situation, if we were to say, okay, well, we're not going to require you to get a license for this property, that is an ongoing offense from perpetually, as long as the property is being rented. So it's a bit of a different scenario. I don't really have anything else to add, other than the bylaw does require the license to be obtained for any rental property within the city of Thorold. And the bylaw does stipulate the minimum required fees for the application. Just a quick calculation for the $500 initial fee that is required for the first time of obtaining a license. That's good for 2 years. It works out to a little over 68 cents per day. And then that fee drops down to $400 for 2 years for renewals, which works out to, let's see, I just want to make sure I got that math right. Yeah, so renewals that would work out to a little under 55 cents per day. But I don't really have anything else to add. It's at council's discretion.
Okay, thank you.
Added something? Oh.
Councilor Longo?
Thank you, Councilor Wilson. Through you to Mr. Gregorio. Sir, when were you made aware that you needed a license for your property?
Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear? Yeah.
2-3 weeks ago, I'm going to say.
So you had no idea that there was a residential licensing bylaw in Thorold?
Correct. I live in Niagara Falls.
But
So
you don't
the
get
only mail I get, oh, go ahead.
You don't get tax bills or water bills with any notices?
Correct. I get their bills, but it's like a complimentary bill. So the bill goes to my tenant and then I get one, but I never open it because it's been the same tenant for like 6 years, maybe 5 years.
So to me, it sounds like you're asking us to make an exception for your property. So where would we draw the line? What would you suggest we do at the city of Thorold?
Anyone that's renting maybe below, anyone that has not done a major conversion of their property. My house was never changed into something it wasn't meant to be. It's a single family home. It's staying as a single family home. Just driving through your city, you can see countless houses are being bought. They're being turned into duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, and they're getting $1,200 per unit. Never mind, I'm charging $900 for the whole house. So if the goal is for families to be crammed with other families into the same house, then I don't know. I think you're going after the wrong person. Not just me. There's probably a whole bunch of landlords that are charging reasonable rent. And as for this $500, am I still talking or no?
Yeah.
I have to hire an electrician, which I'm going to assume is about $150, $150. And you want a requirement for insurance to be $2 million. Insurance to be $2 million. Correct. I've looked and my insurance is $1 million. So I'll have to increase it to $2 million on a 700 square foot house. That's more insurance than I'm paying on my house. So I don't know. And all these fees are going to be paid by my tenant. So it's not coming out of my pocket until, well, they'll come out of my pocket this year because I can't raise the rent until next year. But I'm just, I don't know, looking after them, I guess.
Okay, I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Does anybody else have any further questions? No. I do have a question to the clerk, please. If council was to reconsider the current bylaw, could you just explain to us what would be necessary for us to make amendments or changes to the bylaw? Or
Considering the bylaw passed during this this term of council.
pardon? You clicked out there.
Sorry, just wondering if the bylaw was passed during this term of council.
No, it was the last term of council.
Okay, then I will actually have to look into what our procedural bylaw says about consideration. I don't have that information right in front of me, even though I do have the procedural bylaw in front of me. I'm more familiar with reconsiderations of bylaws that are passed during the current term of council.
Okay, it looks like Mayor Ugolini has an idea. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
No, I'm just saying that since the bylaw was passed, we have made changes to the bylaw, and Jason's made changes that he brought forward to council, amendments to the bylaw. And maybe you want to explain, or expound on that, Jason?
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, so thank you. So if council desires to have the bylaw amended, it'd be a simple vote upon council to direct staff to make the appropriate amendments. I believe what the clerk was going to look into was if council wanted to reconsider the whole bylaw as to whether or not even to have the bylaw. But if it's simply amendments to the bylaw, then that would be simply a direction of council to staff.
Correct. Thank you, Jason.
Councillor Decker?
Thank you, Councillor Wilson, and through you, Mr. Mayor. What type of changes are you looking at making specifically? Is there anything specific you're looking at making? I guess my only concern is if we make an exception this time, then we're going to have more and more people coming, and they're going to expect us to make exceptions for them. So that would be my concern right now. So I'm just curious, what type of changes were you looking at making?
Are you asking me, Councillor Decker?
Yes.
Since I asked the question.
Yes.
Oh, I just more so wanted to understand and have Giovanni understand what the process would be if we can change it and how we can change it. Like, I think for us to get rid of the bylaw altogether, there's a reconsideration vote and you can't have anybody that voted on it before. But since it was a previous council, that might be different. But if we're making changes, I'm not sure what I'm recommending for changes. I just wanted to know what our options were. That's all, if it's even a possibility for anybody to throw an idea out there. Sorry, Jason, you had your hand up.
Thank you. I was just going to say, I think what Mr. Gregorio was implying was that this bylaw should only be applied to properties that have been converted for things such as student rentals, as an example. So I just want to caution everybody, we can't discriminate by tenancy. However, the student rentals aren't always the issues either. There are a lot of other properties that aren't student rentals that still have issues that need to be resolved as far as meeting minimum standards. So I'm not saying, or even for a moment suggesting that Mr. Gregorio's property is one of these, but I just wanted to identify the fact that it's not just rental properties that are housing students that could have issues.
Absolutely. So Jason, I guess my question would be this. I know we can't discriminate. Now, I know if you have more than, I think it's more than 4 units, I believe, or 6 units, you're under different laws, right? There's different things required of you as a landlord.
So there are certain provisions that if you have more than 4 rooms or more than 10 people, there's 2 different situations. It's not that the laws change, but you'd be classified as a boarding house, room and boarding house, as opposed to a single detached dwelling. And it just implements additional measures that have to be taken into place, which are also taken into consideration throughout the residential rental process, such as requiring a fire safety plan as one of the examples.
Okay, yes, okay. So this is just a thought to council. Sorry, this is a new, normally Mr. or Councillor Sentence and I just like throw some ideas together and it goes back to council, but now we're all together. So I guess we can throw ideas together in this forum. But what if we looked at like more than one tenancy? So if it's a single family dwelling, or if it's above that where there's multiple units or multiple rooms, is that something that maybe as staff you could put something together for? And it's not just for Mr. Gregorio, it's for other people that I've heard from as well. I'm just wondering if, I don't know if council would be open to that, but if we had some sort of report back, just helping us on if there was, so if it's a single family dwelling, it would be exempt from that need, right? But if it was a duplex or more, or you were renting more than one room, then the tenancy, the residential bylaw would be, licensing bylaw would be in effect. Does that make sense what I'm asking, Jason?
I think I understand what you're stating, and again, it would be up to council. The only thing I was going to mention is that if council is choosing to consider amendments to the bylaw, my recommendation would be to request a report prior to requesting any or directing any specific amendments to the bylaw. That would give us an opportunity to consider the options that are being considered and provide a informative report to council for consideration before actually making those changes.
Okay, perfect. Councillor Neal?
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Maybe we could look at creating an affordable housing exemption, whatever that might be. And I don't know what that might be, but maybe creating an affordable housing exemption that his $950, taking him as an example, is that anything below $1,000 for a single tenant might have an exemption attached to it. And that's just, I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm just suggesting that maybe we relook at that, because affordable housing is becoming a very important part of our community now. And it might be worth looking at and having a report brought back for that purpose.
Okay, perfect. So again, this is different. Oh, sorry, Councillor Longo, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I guess I need to speak up. I was on last council when this was voted on. It was a very contentious issue. This took years and years in the making by a lot of staff members, a lot of legal advice. The reason it was put in place, the primary reason, was for the safety of tenants. An electrical inspection and a license were deemed essential. I don't think we can discriminate just because somebody pays less in rent that they wouldn't need a licensed property. It's for the safety of the tenants. And Mr. Gregorio, with all due respect to you, it's great that we have landlords who offer properties. It is a business you're running. There are costs involved in businesses. And this is my opinion. I'm just being upfront. I wouldn't want to touch this bylaw. It is working. It's getting better. I understand there's a cost. But again, it's a business you're involved in. If you've owned the building this long, you've done quite well, I'm sure. So again, that's my feeling on it. I, as a counselor, do not want to reconsider this. I think staff's in a difficult situation as it is, trying to enforce it, trying to get everybody licensed. And I won't support any changes that would discriminate against one party or another. And that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I just want to say I couldn't say it better than Councillor Longo did, because I was involved in the last council as well. And I know the work that went into crafting this bylaw, and which, by the way, is being lauded in different areas of the province, that we have the best bylaw in place, because we took parts of all bylaws and tried to put in place a program that was not cash grabbing and looking after the interests of safety. And we crafted, I think, the best bylaw in the province. And Jason keeps coming with amendments, and I'm not opposed to, if we can make an amendment to improve the bylaw, that I'm not opposed to. But you know, you talk about what's affordable, and I laud what you're doing, Giovanni. But here's the problem: you could say 1,000, but what happens when you get 6 students paying $600 a month? Now they're under 1,000, so that's okay. See, it just opens a can of worms that just gets worse and worse and worse. And we know why we put this in place, because the province has certain regulations that says you can't target certain groups. You have to do things in a certain way. And it's and so we crafted a bylaw that was put in place so that it didn't discriminate, and because you're not allowed to. And I think we got a great bylaw, but like I said, if there's some ways we can improve it, and Jason's already made some major improvements to our bylaw, I'm all for that. But definitely, I'm not in favor of reopening this bylaw. But if there's amendments we can make to make improvements, I'm all for it. On the affordable housing front, we do a lot on the affordable housing side because of waiving fees, and most of our affordable housing units that we're going to build are going to be multi-unit affordable housing units, which don't fall under the residential licensing bylaw anyways. So those are just some thoughts and feelings, but I think, Jason, anytime, or if you have any suggestions on ways we can improve the bylaw, I think council would be open to any of those improvements, you know. That's all I have.
Okay, perfect. Just to be clear, I was not suggesting that we work towards getting rid of the bylaw. I was just asking about possibilities of maybe improving. That's what I was talking about. Giovanni, you want to say something? Just one last time, and then we'll.
Am I on? Am I on the whole time? Can
Yes,
anybody
you
talk?
are.
No, that's
Yes.
funny. Anyway, it's funny when someone says that they don't want to discriminate. Find me someone that wants to discriminate. It's one of those words people throw out there, but no one wants the alternative version of it. So it's funny, but I get your point. But if it was maybe a one-time fee, I can see the logic behind it, or I pay it until a new tenant comes in. Like or if I convert my house is considered a single family dwelling. For me to convert it to a duplex, then I need inspections, an electrician can come in. But I don't understand why every 2 years I have to do this. This house hasn't changed since it's been built, probably, other than the wiring's changed. Obviously, it's not the same knob and tube from whenever it was built. But if I was living in this house myself, I would not have to do this stuff. It's just another person's living there. I just happen to charge them rent. So, the fact that it's every 2 years is awkward to me. I don't understand why it's every 2 years.
Yeah, so maybe I can get Jason to answer that, but just to clarify, what they were saying about discrimination is that we cannot discriminate. We can't choose what type of tenants. You can't choose what type of tenants you can rent to, and we can't choose what type of tenants this applies to, meaning we can't say for student properties versus families living somewhere. So we can't put that in a bylaw.
But to
And
convert a
I-
house to,
Oh, sorry, you don't have the floor.
oh,
Sorry.
sorry.
And in terms of having inspections, I believe we spoke about this in the past. If it's over 4 units, then you have different laws. So you do have to have these inspections and fire safety plans and all those sorts of things under a different law outside of this bylaw. That's what I was asking Jason about. But we just have 2 minutes left. We're going to wrap up the meeting. I think it's information for council, and if they want to bring forward at a council meeting to ask staff to come back with not a policy. What am I trying to say? Report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With a report on how to improve it. That's great. I don't think anybody's prepared to do anything at this moment. And just one last time, Jason, if you could explain why 2 years later there's another fee.
So for many business licenses, usually the fees or the licenses come up for renewal annually. At the time that council chose to implement this bylaw, they felt it more appropriate to make it a biannual renewal so that it was would put less it wouldn't be as much of an issue for the landlord. So they weren't having to look to renew it every year. It was just every other year. And the fees are because we're required to do inspections every time it comes up for renewal. Those are inspected by bylaw officers as well as the fire department, just to make sure that these minimum standards are still being adhered to, just like any other business. And that's what this is just another form of business licensing.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to leave the meeting like that. We do thank you for coming to council. We appreciate all your concerns and comments. I'm going to do a little bit more research myself to see if there's anything I'd like a staff report from in the future. I'm just not sure what that would be yet. I was just kind of talking out loud. But thank you very much for your time, and thank you for council's time. Have a great evening.